The sense is today, and I want to pick up one point, is that a lot of these kids are coming out of some of the top schools. There's not job and opportunities, so we'll probably have the next guy, the next Microsoft and all that. You're going to see a lot of people. But we got to make sure we have incentives for people that are willing to take the risk, create the jobs, go out and, guarantee nodes, because, a lot of these businesses I've seen U.S. Chamber put out, like 20 years ago, 100 people go in business in 5 years. There's only 90 that are, there's only 10 left or 8 left. So they're taking big risks to create jobs to help move the economy forward. Mr. Status, one of the things that on tax simplification also got mentioned, fairness. I know, like in our businesses or friends that have businesses, they'll have a building or something and they write the building off 39 years, but the CPAs will come in and say, look, you can take component depreciation, take it over 5, but that's going to cost you $5,000. It's more complicated. You got to get involved. But the small business person that's starting out can't afford that. But yet if you don't have the documentation, so I'm just thinking about things like that, again, where small businesses don't have the same advantage. These are not loopholes, they're just legal, but because they don't have the lawyers and the CPAs, they can't have the same advantages as businesses a little bit larger. What's your thought on that?
Well, what you're talking about is a cost segregation study that's done on a building and its components in order to write it off over a shorter period of time, and hopefully we usually show that you save the money in income taxes to pay for it. The small business owner who's uninformed, who goes into business and doesn't get the proper advice, will not be able to take advantage of those things. And when I deal with most small business people, they're risk takers. I once had a very wealthy individual sit down with me and he said, you could never do what I do and I could never do what you do. And I asked him why. And he said, you're a wage slave. You take wages. You don't want to take the risk of not having a paycheck. Well, I do take that risk now as owner of my business, but at the time I was just a salaried employee. He, on the other hand, said he could lose everything every day. He was always rolling the dice. He was always taking risks. And that's what made him an entrepreneur. And the older I've gotten, the more I've gotten to appreciate that small business owners will cut corners. They will be ignorant of the law. One of the sayings in our office is ignorance is cheap. Because if you know what the law is and you got to comply with it, you have to spend the hours and time and get it right, because if you don't and you get caught, then you have a problem. And that's what most people hire like a CPA for, or another financial advisor that's helping them with their business, is to keep them from running afoul of these arcane rules, is what I want to call them. Going back to the home and the office deduction, I have a former agent in my office, and he said a home and the office deduction is like taking candy from the baby. Very few people are able to actually meet all the rules that are in place in order to have a home office deduction. And the fear of that's been permeated through the public is why it's not taken, because most people feel that it's an audit flag, and it is an audit flag. It's plain and simple, an audit flag. You put it on your return, and chances are you're going to have an audit. And it should be legitimate business reasons to have it, and you shouldn't have to have exclusive use of that for business use. I mean, you use your office 8 hours a day, sometimes like I'm in there like maybe 15, 17 hours, but why should you have to maintain that office for 24 hours as an office in your home? I mean, people can't afford to have all that space go to waste, so if they keep storing personal items in there, that would be a reason to disallow it as an office if you got personal items stored in there. I've known people that have legitimate reasons for having home office businesses, and in our society today, many people are employed at home. That's where they work. You talk to them, and they're at home. That's where they are. That's where their business is located. And I've even seen some of those not take the deduction. So when you're looking at the small business owner and what they have to comply with as far as regulations are concerned, most of them are going to take the risks and say, I'm not going to know what that law is, and I'm just going to go ahead, and if I get caught, then I'll work on it. And it's a shame that they get put in that position, and they shouldn't be put in that position. That they should be able to simply understand what the law is and simply comply with it.
Let me just, can you expound just a little bit more on the frustration and anger? What are the top one or two things that you see with, because you guys deal with a lot of small businesses, that in terms of tax simplification that outrages people the most in the small business community that, the last 5-10 years or whatever? I know there's probably a lot, but can you distill down two or three that really come to mind to you?
I'll give you the major one. The major one is they come in and they look down at the return and they go, I made how much and I owe how much. That they're incredulous at the number because they go, I didn't take that home. They equate income with cash. Okay? So if they don't have the cash, they didn't make it. And if you're sitting there and you're looking at a K-1, say from your business, and it says you made $500,000, well, $350,000 of that went back into the inventory, went back to pay debts, went to purchase other pieces of equipment, and then by the time you pay taxes on the other, $150,000, you're back down to where you're making $100,000. And if you're paying state taxes, it's even lower. So it's much less than you really think. People that are entrepreneurs are always constantly taking that money and putting it back into their business. So they get very angry and frustrated when they're saying, where am I going to come up with this money? I don't have it. It's in the business. So then they're put in the position to where they have to go borrow money to pay the taxes. And that gets them frustrated. The second part that I see a lot of anger with is Social Security tax. You can actually have a profit on a Schedule C, have no taxes, no income taxes, yet have substantial taxes for self-employment tax. And that's very hard to explain also to individuals. Alternative minimum tax. That one, when that pops on there and I'm going down my sheet and explaining it to them, well, this is alternative minimum tax. Well, what is that? Well, what the government gives us, the government take it away. Okay, so you get a deduction here, but because you had too many deductions, now we're put in a position to where we have to pay taxes on that. So you've actually lost that for this year. So that's another one that really just rankles them immensely. Probably when I sit there and explain to them that they can't take a deduction for something that they think is a legitimate deduction, they get angry at that. Gifts are an item. Currently, when I sit there and say, well, they come in, they go, well, I want to give some Christmas gifts out to some of my friends that are referral sources to my business. And I tell them, well, you're limited to $25. And they go, $25? You can't buy anything for $25. What am I supposed to give them, movie tickets? Really, you should be looking at what the promotional value of those items are, because really you're promoting your business. You're promoting yourself. You're promoting being able to get more business from them, and that should be a legitimate expense. I don't advocate giving away lavish gifts, but there should be the ability there to do that. And you have a lot hard time explaining that. I think that probably the other things is when I start getting into record keeping, talk about cell phone usage, personal use, it's de minimis, it has no business being listed property. Telling them that they have to keep records for their automobile log, and I'm calling them on the phone, what was your beginning mileage, what was your ending mileage, how much was business, how much was personal. That, when I start going into that and they go, I don't know, you got that last year, my bookkeeper has it. And that's another point that should be brought up. When you're in a large business, it's very easy to maintain the proper records because you have an accounting department. You have people that are responsible for saying, hey, give me those expense slips, give me your records. And there's real threat of not getting your money back because you're an employee in the business and you don't get paid if you don't give them the proper records. But when you're the owner and you look at yourself, yeah, give me the records, and you stick your head around the other corner, no sir. What are you going to do, fire yourself? It's not going to happen. And that, the self-discipline part that's there. And then when they come in and they're talking to me and I say, well, we have to have this. And, well, my other accountant didn't want that. Why do you need that? I said, well, I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. And so really it gets down to, like I said, ignorance can be cheap, because if you don't require certain things, it's more expensive, because then I have to spend the time chasing this stuff down and making sure they're in compliance.
So one thing you're saying is that as a CPA, you also have to be a little expertise in anger management.
Oh, yes, sir.
I yield back. Thank you.